Ship after ship broke out of empty space, and none of them should exist. Talos Vex stopped counting somewhere past a dozen hulls, because more kept coming behind them. His hands were still on the controls, but he wasn't touching anything. The display did the counting for him now, and it kept climbing past a number his mind didn't want to hold. The nebula behind him had a name on every Drakari star chart: uninhabitable. Radiation, the record said. No strategic value. Generations of patrol had flown past that line without once thinking to check it twice. He opened the channel anyway. His voice came out steadier than he felt. Eternal conquest. This is Talos Vex. Someone needs to look at this. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Captain Vithkor turned toward the feed and felt his mouth go dry. Ship after ship. Then another. Then another, until the screen stopped showing hulls and started showing a wall of light instead. He keyed the channel to the High Warlord's chamber. High Warlord, we have a situation. Frak Vorn didn't look up from the gala reports scattered across his desk. A long pause passed before he answered, long enough that Vithkor would remember the shape of it. That is impossible, Vorn said. There are no humans left. With respect, High Warlord. Vithkor kept his eyes on the display where the light kept spreading. They appear to disagree. No warning, no declaration, no request to speak first. Just ships, and more ships, and the kind of silence that only comes from something that has been planning for a very long time. Then the channel opened again, and this time it wasn't Talos Vex. A voice reached every comm in Drakari space at once. Calm, unhurried, almost bored. 12 words. That was all it gave them. We are not extinct. We were patient. The harvest has begun. The cup of ceremonial wine slipped from Vorn's hand and broke against the floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. The number on Talos Vex's screen stopped climbing and held there, blinking, as patient as the fleet itself. 9 minutes. That was what the tacticians would tell the High Warlord, and not one of them yet understood what 9 minutes was supposed to be enough time for. I wish I could tell you the silence lasted. It didn't. Stay close. 9 hours earlier, the same hall had been full of noise instead of silence. The obsidian citadel held ring after ring of black polished stone, and on this night every seat in it was full. Frak Vorn stood at the center. In ceremonial bronze he'd had polished twice that week, and told the story he had told more times than he could count. 300 years ago, humanity was a threat, he said. Today, they are nothing. The crowd roared. It always did. In the top ring, apart from the noise, a small, pale-skinned woman sat with her hands folded in her lap. Elder Thessary had heard this speech before, at gala after gala, year after year. She did not clap. She had learned, long ago, that folding her hands tighter did more good than arguing ever had. Somewhere below, unnoticed, a junior officer flagged an anomaly report and marked it routine. Nobody read it that night. Nobody would, until a scout on the edge of nowhere read it himself and couldn't make it make sense. Talos Vex had flown the boundary of the Shroud for years, and in all that time he had never been trusted with anything more interesting than debris counts and gas density reports. His ship, the Quiet Wren, was old enough that half its systems needed manual restarts, and he liked it that way. Old systems didn't lie to you. They just failed honestly. The nebula's edge glittered green and violet through the viewport, radiation scattering light in patterns that had looked the same for as long as anyone could remember. Officially, nothing lived past that line. Officially, nothing ever had. He was hours into a routine sweep when the sensor gave him something that wasn't gas density, a shape, faint but organized, not the tumble of debris or the drift of dust, but something holding formation against the pull of the nebula's currents. He leaned in. Ran the scan again. It didn't go away. He filed the report the way procedure demanded, flagged for review, marked with the standard anomaly code. Then he waited for someone to tell him it was nothing. The answer came back fast. Sensor malfunction. Confirm and recalibrate. He recalibrated. He ran it a third time. The shape was still there. And this time it had moved, which debris didn't do on its own. He filed a second report, this one using language that risked years of an unremarkable record he'd never once let slip into insubordination. He didn't send it right away. He sat with his hand over the transmit key longer than he wanted to admit. Behind him, a ration pouch sat half-finished in its clip. He hadn't eaten in a while. He took a bite now mechanically, because his hands needed something to do besides shake. Then he sent the report and turned the Quiet Wren toward the boundary instead of away from it. The Empire's charts called the nebula uninhabitable, radiation contamination, no strategic value. Talos Vex had read that entry more times than he could count, and it had never once occurred to him to ask who had written it, or why the radiation signature never seemed to change, season after season, like something being maintained rather than something dying. The truth, though, nobody in the Drakari Empire had thought to look for it, was simpler and stranger than contamination. The signature was built, not born, a lie so well made that generations of scout patrols had flown past it without once seeing through. He didn't know any of that yet. All he knew was that the shape in his sensors was still holding formation, and that the closer he flew, the less it looked like anything the Empire had a name for. His comm chimed. Command, again. He braced for another dismissal. Talos Vex, this is Fleet Command. The voice on the other end had the flat patience of someone reading from a script. Your report has been reviewed. Recalibrate your sensors and resume standard patrol. I've recalibrated twice, Talos Vex said. The signature holds formation. Debris doesn't hold formation. A pause, noted. Resume patrol. The channel closed before he could answer. He sat with his hand on the console for a long moment, weighing 30 years of an unremarkable record against what his own eyes had shown him twice now. Then he pushed the quiet Wren closer to the boundary anyway. The nebula's edge came up fast, green and violet curling past the viewport like something alive. His instruments started to complain the moment he crossed the line, not failing, just uneasy, the way old systems got when they were being asked questions they weren't built to answer. And there, half swallowed by gas and light, a hull. Long, dark, unmistakably built by hands, sitting motionless in a place where nothing was supposed to live. He didn't recognize the design. That alone told him more than the shape did. He reached for the transmit key, and this time his hand didn't shake. 90 light years away, in a chamber carved into the underside of a hollowed-out asteroid, Admiral Elias Cole set down his mug. It was chipped along the rim, the glaze gone thin in places, and if you tilted it toward the light, you could still make out a flag nobody in the galaxy had seen flown in 300 years. He'd carried it since he was a boy. He set it down before every decision that mattered. The way some men touched a rail or checked a watch. Old habits didn't need a reason. Commander Vance, he said. Begin the countdown. Vance didn't ask if he was certain. He'd stopped asking that decades ago. He simply turned to the panel and keyed the sequence that 4 generations of engineers had built toward without ever expecting to see it finished. Cole had been 18 the night humanity went dark, 18, and too young to understand what it meant when the last transmissions from Earth stopped coming and nobody official ever explained why. He understood it now. He'd spent 55 years understanding it, one training cycle at a time, one hidden shipyard at a time, until understanding became a kind of patience nobody in the galaxy had a word for anymore. We hold until the signal, he said. Not before. They found us, Vance said. It wasn't a question. One scout. Cole's voice didn't rise, it never did. Let him look, let him wonder. We don't move on a rumor. We move on the day we chose, and not 1 hour before it. He will not know until 9 minutes are already spent, Cole thought, and did not say it aloud, because some things a man kept for himself. Behind Talos Vex, his console lit with an incoming hail, command. Faster this time, sharper. He ignored it long enough to finish the burst transmission he'd queued. Image, coordinates, timestamp, proof sent before anyone could tell him to stand down. Then the hail came through anyway, and it wasn't command this time. It was Vethkor, personally, voice tight. Talos Vex, your transmission reached the Citadel. The High Warlord wants it struck from the record. It's real, Talos Vex said. I saw the hull myself. I believe you, Vethkor said. Quieter now. That isn't the problem. The problem, unspoken between them, was that 30 years of Vorn's certainty could not survive one scout's honest report, and an empire that had built its peace on a lie would rather bury the evidence than question the peace. Talos Vex looked back at the nebula, at the dark hull still holding its patient formation, and understood for the first time that being right might cost him more than being wrong ever had. The strike order came through an hour later, not against him, against the file. His report, quietly reclassified, buried under 3 layers of clearance that made it functionally impossible to see. The image remained, the coordinates remained, but no one below the rank of fleet commander would ever be shown either one. Not once, not twice, for 287 years. In council chambers and private audiences and the margins of reports nobody read twice. She had told the Drakari that a species declared extinct without a body, without wreckage, without a single confirmed death. Elder Thessery heard about the reclassification the way she heard about most things, secondhand through a council aide who thought she'd want to know and who didn't understand why she only nodded and said nothing. She had warned them, was not extinct, it was hiding. And a species that hid for 3 centuries was not hiding out of weakness. They had called her a relic, a superstitious elder clinging to old fears. She had folded her hands and let them. Now a scout's buried report sat in a vault 3 levels below the citadel, and somewhere past the edge of the Empire's charts. A fleet that had been waiting since before most of the officers in that hall were born had just been found by exactly one honest man. She did not smile. She had learned a long time ago that vindication and relief were not the same thing. On the quiet Ren, Talos Vex ran a hand over his console and found, buried in a maintenance channel, nobody thought to monitor, a second signal, faint, rhythmic, clearly artificial. Not from the hull he'd seen, from somewhere deeper in the nebula, further than his sensors should have been able to reach at all. He almost didn't report it. His last report had cost him his record and nearly his ship. He sent it anyway. Routed through a private channel Vethkor had quietly given him, bypassing command entirely. There isn't one ship in there, he wrote. There's a fleet, and I think it's listening to us right now. 90 light years away, Commander Vance looked up from a passive scan readout with an expression Cole had not seen on him in years. Sir, something crossed our outer buoy. Vance's hand stilled over the panel. It's not Drakari standard. It's a private channel, encrypted with a cipher we haven't used since. He stopped. Since Earth, Cole finished for him. Somewhere in the dark between them, 12 sensor buoys that had sat silent for 287 years began, one by one, to wake up. The alert that woke High Warlord Thrak Vorn came at the worst possible hour, 3 hours before the Triumph Gala, while his aides were still pinning the last of his honor scars into place. A private channel transmission was intercepted. His adjutant said, Origin, Scout Commander Talos Vex. Destination, unknown, encrypted. Vorn's scales darkened along his jaw. The one who filed the false report. The same, High Warlord. Bring him in chains to the Gala, Vorn said. Let the Empire see what happens to those who manufacture fear. Talos Vex heard the order before it reached him. Vethkor made sure of that, routing the warning through the same private channel Talos had used himself. He didn't run. Running would have proven Vorn right. Instead, he flew the quiet Ren to the nearest relay station and did the one thing 30 years of an unremarkable record had trained out of him. He told the truth to someone who couldn't bury it. He recorded everything, the hull, the second signal, the reclassified report, Vorn's order, and sent it not to command, but to every scout channel in the sector at once, unencrypted, unmissable. They can arrest me, he said into the recording. They can't arrest what I saw. Elder Thessery received the broadcast on her private terminal an hour before the gala began. She watched it twice, then she did something she had not done in over a decade. She requested an audience with the High Warlord himself, uninvited. She was refused. She went anyway, and stood at the edge of the ceremonial hall where the guards could see her, and chose not to stop her, because removing an elder of the Thorani in front of 2,000 witnesses was its own kind of story nobody wanted told that night. 90 light years away, Commander Vance read the activation report a second time, as if the numbers might change if he looked hard enough. All 12 buoys are transmitting, he said. Sir, if they've found us, they haven't found us. Cole picked up his mug, turned it once in his hands, set it down again. They've found a scout story. There's a difference. An empire this certain doesn't move on one report. It buries it. And if it doesn't, Cole looked at the display, the long dark shape of the fleet, 4 generations deep, waiting inside the shroud the way a held breath waits to be let go. Then we move early, but not yet. We hold for the signal we chose. He did not say what he was thinking, that a scout willing to burn his own career for the truth was the first sign in 300 years that the Empire's certainty had a crack in it. Cracks widened. He had learned to be patient with cracks. The gala went ahead as scheduled, because Vorn would not be seen canceling a celebration over one scout's fantasy. But the anthem played thinner that night, and the roar of the crowd came a half-second slower, as though some part of the room had already heard what the rest refused to. Vorn took the days. He found Thessary's pale face in the crowd before he found anyone else's, and something in his sneer tightened. "There are those," he said, "who would have you believe the dead can return. That a species extinguished can simply wait and hide, and one day walk back through the door, as though 3 centuries owed them nothing. They don't need the door," Thessary said. Her voice didn't carry far, but it carried far enough. Every screen in the Obsidian Citadel, every terminal, every display, every ceremonial banner rigged with projection cloth flickered at once and went dark, then lit again with a single feed. A scout ship's sensor log, time-stamped, unedited. They were never behind it. The hall went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with respect. Vorn's honor scars stood out dark against his bronze plate. "Escort the elder to a holding chamber. Her age has clearly—" He never finished the sentence. Showing a hull the size of a city sitting motionless inside a nebula, the Empire's own charts called empty. Talos Vex's broadcast had reached the gala itself. 2,000 officers who had spent the evening celebrating an extinction watched in total silence as the file that had been buried 3 levels down played across the walls of their own triumph. At the relay station, Talos Vex watched his own recording play back to him through a stolen feed and felt something he hadn't expected. Not triumph. Not fear, but a kind of tired relief. Vorn's hand found the shattered stem of his ceremonial cup before he realized he'd been holding it too hard. "That is a fabrication," he said, and his voice, for the first time that anyone in the hall could remember, did not sound certain at all. "The way a man feels when a weight he's carried too long finally gets set down somewhere other than his own back." He didn't know it yet, but 9 hours from that moment, he would be the one flying escort ahead of a fleet that had waited 287 years for exactly this kind of crack to open. 90 light-years away, an alert chimed on Vance's panel, sharper than anything before it. "Sir, the Citadel's broadcast just went out empire-wide. Every world, every relay, every ship." He looked up. "They know. All of them." "Then the Empire has already decided what it believes," he said, "before we've said a single word to them ourselves." He turned to the display, to the fleet holding its long, patient formation in the dark, and for the first time in 55 years, not just the High Warlord's command staff, everyone. Cole set his mug down and did not pick it back up. His voice carried something close to urgency. "Move the countdown up. We don't wait for their confusion to become an order. We answer it ourselves, on our terms, not theirs." Behind him, unnoticed, a junior tech logged the timestamp change in the ship's record, the way historians would later mark the exact second an Empire's 300-year certainty ran out of road. 9 minutes. That was the number the Citadel's tacticians gave High Warlord Vorn, and not one of them could tell him what 9 minutes was supposed to buy. Vithkor stood at his post on the Eternal Conquest, watching the same wall of light Talos Vex had first seen alone, and understood that the Empire's response would not be measured in ships or firepower. It would be measured in whether anyone in that chamber could say something true. "High Warlord," he said. "Orders?" Vorn did not answer right away. He was looking at the shattered cup still in his hand, as if it might explain what his own doctrine could not. Elder Thessary, still standing at the edge of the hall where the guards had let her stay, spoke into the silence he left behind. "You could ask them what they want," she said. "You have never once asked." 90 light-years away, in the dark heart of the shroud, Admiral Elias Cole picked up his mug one last time. He didn't drink from it. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, and he found he didn't mind. "Commander Vance," he said, "open the channel. All of it. Every world that's listening." Vance's hands moved over the panel, and for a moment neither man spoke, because some silences only need to be filled once. "Sir," Vance said quietly. "Whatever you say next, they'll remember it for the next 300 years. Cole looked at the fleet on the display. 4 generations of quiet work now finally in motion, and thought of his mother's hands packing a bag she told him was for a drill. He had been 8, not 18, when he first learned what patience cost. He had never told anyone that. He didn't tell Vance now either. Some things a man kept, the way he kept the mug, not because they were secret, but because they were his. "Send it," he said. The transmission that reached every Drakari world was not new. Talos Vex had heard part of it already, alone in the dark near the boundary of the shroud. But this time it did not come from one scout's stolen feed. It came from the fleet itself, on every channel at once, and this time no one could bury it 3 levels down. "We are not extinct. We were patient." A pause. long enough that 2,000 officers in the Obsidian Citadel held their breath without meaning to. You gave us 300 years to disappear. We spent them learning how to come back. No fear in it. No threat either, just the flat, unhurried certainty of a man who had waited so long that hurrying had stopped meaning anything to him. It simply began to move forward together, in a formation that took 3 years to train and 287 to earn, and the sight of it more than any weapon. The harvest has begun. The fleet did not fire, it did not need to, was what finally broke the last of Vorn's certainty. In front of every officer who had ever cheered his name, he set the shattered cup down on the day's rail. His hand, for the first time in 132 years of conquest, was not steady. "Stand down the fleet," he said. "All of it. Do not fire first." Vithkor's voice came back fast, almost relieved. "Understood, High Warlord." Elder Thessari watched him give the order and felt none of the satisfaction she had once imagined she would. 287 years of being right did not feel like winning, it felt like finally being allowed to stop carrying something. At the boundary of the Shroud, Talos Vex flew escort ahead of the lead human ships, exactly where a scout belonged, and found that the crack he'd opened 3 days ago had become the widest thing in the galaxy. The Drakari Empire did not fight. It watched and recalculated and began the long work of learning what it meant to have been wrong for 300 years. Cole's fleet did not celebrate either. There was no cheering on the bridge, no anthem, no gala. Vance looked over once, expecting something, relief maybe, or triumph, and found only a tired man setting down an empty mug. "That's it?" Vance asked. 55 years, and that's it?" "That's it," Cole said. "We didn't do this to win a war. We did it so nobody would ever get to decide we were gone again." Elder Thessari requested one more thing before the night ended. A private channel to the human fleet, unmonitored, unofficial. She did not know if anyone would answer. Someone did. A young officer's voice, cautious, checking her identity twice before speaking freely. "You warned them," the voice said, "for 287 years. We know. We kept count too." She folded her hands, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, the gesture wasn't bracing against anything. "Then you kept better records than they did," she said. In the Obsidian Citadel, the broadcast screens finally went dark, one by one, the way they had lit 3 hours before. Vorn stood alone at the center of the empty dais. In ceremonial bronze he'd polished for a triumph that had turned into something else entirely, and no one in the hall met his eyes. His career would not survive the season. He understood that now, the way he understood the sensor logs he'd once called a fabrication, the way he understood the 12 words he could not unhear. Somewhere in the wreckage of the night's plans, a junior aide quietly filed away the reclassification order on Talos Vex's original report and marked it for the first time unclassified. 9 hours after the fleet's first transmission, Admiral Elias Cole stood at the edge of the Shroud and looked out at open space for the first time in 55 years without needing to hide from it. He held the mug loosely in one hand, the same chipped ceramic, the same faded flag, cold coffee inside that he had no intention of finishing. It was the only image the Drakari had of him, captured on 100 different feeds across 100 different worlds, a man delivering judgment while drinking something gone cold. Behind him, Vance logged the final entry in a countdown that had run for 287 years, and now quietly had nothing left to count. Cole set the mug down on the console rail, where the faded flag caught the light one more time. He did not raise it in celebration. He did not drink from it. He simply left it there, empty and cold, facing out toward the dark where an empire was still learning what patience could cost. The harvest had begun, and the Drakari had been farmers of silence.